So let's talk about the presentation layer first. Like we said in our last episode, we talked about some of the popular frameworks, but the presentation layer is the first part of an interior architecture.
Yeah, so that's what your end user is going to see.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
just like it sounds, presentation layer. So if you're an end user, when I go to websites, I go to on mobile applications.
Yeah.
That's what I see is the presentation layer.
Right.
I have no idea what's behind the scenes, except I can see the presentation layer.
Exactly.
I think that's an easy description.
Yeah, pretty simple. Yeah. And then once you get past the presentation layer, then you have your business or service layer. And in your business and service layer, that's where, like we said, we have all of our business decisions that need to be made. So let's just give a scenario if we're going with customer again. So in our presentation layer, someone's requested customer information. Mm-hmm. So from there, you may have a service layer that makes a call to your data layer to return the customer information. But we want to know more about that. So let's just say, we're on an e-commerce site and we want to know your last 5 orders that you had.
Transactions.
Yeah. So, we would pull that in and we look at your last 5 transactions, and maybe we want to know how much money you've spent on the site so far, because if you've spent a certain amount of money, we might want to give you a 10% discount. Right. So all of these business rules would be in this service layer to construct an object model of a customer and return it to the presentation layer.
Right.
So go ahead. You want to talk about the data layer?
Yeah, the data layer. So kind of we touched on it there where these business rules exist, but where are they getting this data from? Right. Where do these transactions exist?
Yep.
It's in the data layer. So traditionally a database, a storage. But I've seen there are some applications. It doesn't have to be a database. It could be some text files or something like that.
Yep.
Not recommended.
No,
no. But it's possible, and it still serves as that data.
But you could have a small company that doesn't really need a lot of data. Yeah. They may have a JSON file. I mean, just a big scripting file that has all of this data for you.
But it's still your data tier.
Right. So it depends on the size of the company. It depends on the size of your application. But what rules do you think should be as part of the data layer? In my opinion, and it's widely accepted that the only thing that should happen in the data layer is for you just to pull data, just to request it.
Yeah, just
no business layer logic or anything like that should reside in that in that layer. So it's very concise. This 3-tiered architecture really organizes your application. It separates it out into different areas, and it's easier to maintain. And every layer has a certain responsibility.
Right. Yep.
So, Drew, do you have any disadvantages that you think are to this approach?
Yeah, I think one major disadvantage is probably the uptime for it. So if you're a new developer or a solo developer, it can kind of be a lot of work to get this up and running as a interior instead of just putting it all on one layer.
Right.
That can kind of be a little more complex.
Yes.
But there's not really many cons to it that I see. I think if you're going to be in software development, you're going to see an interior architecture.
Right.
At least once.
Yeah, and I think a disadvantage is that, if you don't have developers that are seasoned in that type of architecture or design pattern or anything like that, then the ramp up time does take a lot longer. Right. Junior developers who have never operated in this space, it's a new mindset, so they could struggle there. But I think a mixture of senior developers and junior developers to mentor,
which you should have probably
right, which you should have. So. But those obstacles can be overcome fairly quickly. But definitely a great approach to software design. You usually see a 3-tier architecture system in e-commerce applications, or any type of database-driven site.
So what's some pros to an interior?
Pros to an interior?
Or three-tier
Well,
some pros for it.
yeah. Well, when you have a three-tiered architecture system, you have logic that is separated, and it does only what that specific area of responsibility is supposed to do,
Right.
which makes it easier to maintain.
Yep.
If you need to update the business layer with new business rules,
Right.
that particular part of your application is being updated, and you're not touching your data layer, you're not touching your presentation layer.
And you can kind of separate out developers. They can work on separate pieces instead of being in this one spaghetti code thing. And that's when you run into a lot of merge conflicts and stuff like that. It could be disastrous.
And I think that a lot of and you see interior architectures in monolithic systems.
Yeah.
And when a company is just starting out, a lot of developers who don't know the interior architectural approach will put everything in a method.
Right. Yeah.
The call to the database, the business rules, they're all in one method, and
not separated.
Right. And when you need to update business rules, that one method could really, really get to bloat to many lines of code.
Yep.
So, keeping this approach intact and using it will definitely help separate areas of responsibility. It'll make code easily maintained. And like you said, you can distribute the work amongst your developers. That team A is responsible for this, team B is responsible for that. It just brings order and structure to your development process.
Right. Yeah, I think if you're not doing interior, at least interior architecture, definitely ask the question why.
Right.
I think it should be pretty common practice at this point.
Right. And the beauty about interior architecture is that it's not just for monolithic systems. You can take this approach and you can apply it to microservices, distributed systems, service-oriented systems. And we'll get into that in just a second. But in my opinion, an interior architecture is it's kind of a old school of thought, but it works, and you can apply it to every single one of these approaches.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of how they evolve. Like when we go into the other two popular patterns in this time, they've kind of evolved from that layer and just